So we're just a couple weeks out from the release of Republic. We've announced the game, and the response has really been overwhelming. So I think the next step for Camouflage is basically to deliver on that promise, that visual quality bar that we set for ourselves, and making sure that the game is as performant as possible and that it basically plays as well as it looks.
At this stage of the project, we've reached a point where profiling is becoming very important. One thing I use very often to help us with figuring out what are problem areas in our game is the profiler in Unity. You can use, say, like the CPU profiler to see what could be causing your CPU to take too much time. There's a GPU profiler also. A fairly recent feature is also the timeline. It'll actually show you how the CPU and the GPU are timing together.
Like, we have a lot of lights in our game, and there's dynamic lights everywhere. And because of that, you're gonna have a large expense, especially if those lights are shadow casting. So just think, every light that you have in your scene that's shadow casting, you have to pay an additional pass for that. So if you have a small scene that has two lights that are shadow casting, that's 2 passes. And in most cases, you can get away with that. We have plenty of scenes that have 2, 3. But if you ever look at our Cocoon, we have like 30 lights that can be casting shadows at any given time. And that's a huge performance issue.
So in order to make it perform better, especially on lower end devices, I created a system where the user can choose different quality settings, which we try to auto-detect the first time they run the game. So if they turn down their shadow setting, what we do is we drop out several lights, which are more just polished lights, and by cutting those, they get more performance back.
So the Frame Debugger is a great new feature in Unity 5 to help you debug various graphical issues in your game. Basically what it allows you to do is to step over individual draw calls in your scene and see the visual effect of those individual draw calls, and you can incrementally see your game being rendered, which is very useful in determining where specific issues in your game lie.
In the terminus space of Republic, we had this issue where one of our post effects, when combined with some forward rendered objects being in the scene, would cause a bunch of lights to flicker as you turn the camera past them, or if you zoomed in and out. We tend to, whenever we load in any art or we load in any lights, we usually have something up on the screen to kind of hide that effect, usually some kind of like static transition. And during that, for one frame, we actually disabled those lights right after they were loaded in, and then re-enabling them one frame later, that worked around the issue that we had with them dropping out.
The task was given to try to make the water lessen the load on the GPU, CPU. Technically, the water that we were using before had destructors on it. There were scripts enabled that would kind of target it to each device. And so you could implement refraction and reflections on the higher end devices. What we did was I went into our shaders, and basically I was able to create the type of shader that we use for glass. I figured that that's reflective. You can set distortion with the use of a C# script, basically just for UV panning. We were able to go in and control the animations of the water with this ripple effect that was really cool. And so our water is now a lot more performant, and it's going to be the same material and shader that we use on the high-end devices and the low-end devices, which is one of the biggest issues we were having.
I'm just ecstatic. I mean, this is a great time in our production. I'm just ready to get this into the public's hand and see what they think.
We shipped this initial release of Republic Remastered on a beta version of Unity 5. So we still have a long way to go. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
I definitely learned a lot and grew as a programmer. In particular, I learned a lot about graphics in general.
I can't wait to get into some new spaces, create some new content, and utilize Enlighten and other tools much more than we could before.
I know a lot of people on the team were scared of stopping midway through development to transform our game, but we can safely look back filled with pride at what we've been able to accomplish thanks to one another and thanks to Unity 5.